use your God power to get everything you ever wanted and live the life of your dreams. The Master's Course. Copyright 2010 by Richard Lee McKim Jr. All rights reserved. Let the quest for knowing begin. Chapter 10. The reality of your body as a representation. Every scientist has always said that our body and the world around us is an illusion, a figment of our imaginations. Most people think, so what? And I agree. If I were them, I would feel the same way. What use is it to know this information? Who cares? To me, it is useless to know that information unless it helps you in some way have a better life experience. In this section, not only am I going to say the same things that you've heard 100 times, that your body is just an imaginary projection, but I'm going to show you how you can use that information to change your reality and improve your life. It will be easiest to start out by explaining the actual reality of your body. Your body is an amazing, spectacular work of art. I say art because it is only for show and it has no real function. It is an amazingly complex work of art that has billions and billions of moving and functioning parts, which in the end is still only for show and display and has no real function. It is an amazing, complex, physical representation of the real thing, which is actually non-physical in nature. In other words, your body is only a projected physical representation of the real thing, which is an energy field. Naturally, something that is a representation doesn't in itself function, but instead represents that which is actually functioning. In our case, that would be our energy form or energy body. Yes, I know that you can feel and see with it, and if you get cut, you bleed and all that. That is what you are supposed to think. Thank God for that. Just like a ventriloquist wants you to believe that his dummy is really talking, and even though it looks and sounds like he is, in the end, he is not. It is an illusion. It is all an illusion. It is a wonderful illusion that we all signed up for and really wanted when we got here in this physical experience. However, some of us want to see behind the red curtain and really understand how it works. That includes you. Because if you weren't interested in knowing how things really work, you wouldn't be reading this book. I'm going to start from the basics and build as we go. First, we need to really understand what representation is. Representations. Representations are examples, symbols, objects, pictures, people, animals, thoughts, names, identifiers, pointers, and definitions that refer to a specific energy field or a specific meaning, which could be a subset of another larger host field or greater meaning. A morphic resonant field, if you will. Most energy fields are members of a larger field, and they themselves host smaller, more specific energy fields, which could be called subsets of the host field. We are only representations or identifiers of what we really are, which is really only energy. Specifically, we are a certain energy field, in essence. The concept of representations is so important that I'm going to explain it with 4 different analogies so that you will have a crystal clear understanding of how they work. I will compare them to a computer music player, software, a character on the Star Trek holodeck, an avatar in the virtual world of Second Life, and finally, as a marionette puppet. Number 1, the computer music player software as a representation. If you have a computer or have used one, this example will help explain representations further. In the old days, we listened to music on the radio and even record players. And by the way, who remembers 8-tracks? These were all very mechanical devices for the most part. When you pushed a button, you really pushed one. When you turned on the device, a real light came on to show you that it was powered up. You really turned a dial, and it really moved from one place to the other. But even though they were mostly mechanical devices, they still had some representations on them. For instance, when you turned the tuning dial on the radio, a needle moved across a series of numbers representing the frequency that the radio was being tuned to. While the needle didn't actually do any tuning itself, it showed you what was going on. We're going to revisit this idea of representations using a clock radio, the old kind, in the last section of this chapter called Representations and Their Relationships. By that time, we will have a lot more information to work with, and it is going to be very interesting. Until then, today we have the music players on our computers. Everything about the player is a representation. Nothing is real. No real buttons to push, no real tuning dials, nor tracks on a record or tape. It is all represented on the screen of the computer. And when you want to turn on the player to start the music, you don't reach up and push the button on the screen. You only represent that you push the button on the screen by clicking in the right place with your computer mouse. So, the mouse represents your finger, and the computer screen represents the music player, and music comes out the speaker as if it were a real record player. When you turn on the player, a light turns on to show it is powered up. But the light is just a picture of a green spot where there was a picture of a black spot before. It's not a real light. It's only a representation. The player on the screen is no more than a drawing, a picture, a work of art. It in itself has no function whatsoever. It may have lights that turn on and dials that move and bouncing lights, which in the end are still only pictures that are presented on the screen at the appropriate time to represent something that you will recognize as a functioning music player. Yet, we interact with this picture on the computer screen as if it were a real music player. Then we got a picture of these computer music players. There's 4 different ones, what they call skins. Now, the thing that's important about this is these are all the same radio, but they're just being represented with 4 different looks. Here it says these are 4 different skins that you can get for your music player. It is still the same music player underneath, but how it is represented on the computer screen can be drastically altered at the click of your mouse. Notice how realistic the buttons look. They are just pictures, but you can push them with your computer controls just like they were real buttons. You can push the volume slide as if it were a real slide. Now, let's play with this representation some more to really understand this concept. If the player is on top of the screen, but something else you have running on the computer is in front of it, you can't push the play button. Even if your mouse is in the right spot, representing your finger perfectly, the player is not being represented, so you can't start the music. What if something happened to your display software and that part of the player was missing altogether? If the representation is missing, you can't use it anymore. In fact, if there were any part of the player that was missing or disabled, it could no longer be used. What if the player was represented in a different place on the computer screen? You would have to represent your finger in a different place if you wanted to turn it on. It is important to realize that these representations are a two-way street. You first represent that you turned on the player by clicking on its representative button, and then it responds by representing that it is on, by turning on the power light, quote, a picture of a green dot, and playing the music. Every time you perform a representative action, it responds with the appropriate represented response. All the action, the actual work, is happening in the computer memory and processor. It is invisible to you, and even if you could see it, it would be indecipherable to you. It would be millions of ones and zeros streaming by. There would be nothing that looked like a record or a tape. Nothing would look like a power light or a tuning dial. Only millions of ones and zeros zooming by in fractions of a second. But that's okay, because you don't need to know how all that works behind the scenes. You only need to know how to work with the representations, and you do that quite well. In fact, the player on the computer screen is as real as any radio or music player you have ever had, and even better, even though it is only a picture on a computer screen. So is the music player on the computer screen real or not? Representations are real as you need them to be. They actually accomplish what they are supposed to accomplish. They can be operated easily and respond perfectly every time. That is very realistic. And according to our definition, this must be reality because it is something that you can personally experience.
Options. Now activating the next video, play options. 1 moment please. Click on the green arrow to start watching the next video. Or, click on the red arrow to start watching the prior video. Or, click on the tan arrow to go to the main course menu and guide, with links to all course chapters, excerpts, and special reports. Up next, special video options. Click on your choice of course videos, menus, and excerpts. Now switching to the special video options menu and activating the video selection buttons. Click on your selection number to start watching the video. "15 seconds till we switch to the next page with the free download information. Pause the video now if you need more time to review the available selections." This is the end of this course video. Its video number is listed above. To watch the next video, simply click on the next video in number sequence. Thank you.